So, hello. Um, oh, by the way, I can't see anyone's faces at the moment. All I can see is Keynote in all its glory. So, feel free to pull faces and mock me while I do this. So, hi, um, I'm Dan. You probably know me as that guy from the Twitters. Um, I, if I were to sort of be able to articulate what it is that actually drives me, it's a combination of writing, software engineering, psychology, and feeling everything all the time, always. This is a talk called A Request for Comments, and I wonder if you can guess what it's about. When I'm brought in on a problem or begin a new piece of work, the first thing I do is start with why. And if you're wondering why I would write a talk called A Request for Comments, in this case, it started with a meme. This one. And I'm guessing a bunch of you have probably seen some variation of this floating around Twitter. It made me chuckle. And then when I thought about it a little bit more, it struck me as a symptom of something a little more troublesome. This is my 20th year of working as a software engineer. And in the past 10 or so, it feels like as a community of software developers, we kind of fragment a little bit. There's a real undertone of contempt permeating the culture. And one of the areas where it feels most troubled is when people talk about writing comments. There's a real sense of othering that happens. Like there's a disconnect between their reality and what someone else might be experiencing. It's their comments in my code. And if I consider which parts of the existential model of Dan this lights up, it's definitely these two. It gets to me. There is something missing. I see things like that and there's a lack of empathy. But what do I mean when I say empathy? Empathy is the ability to understand what someone is experiencing and reflect back that understanding. This is my favorite definition of empathy. It's direct and to the point. The essence of empathy is simply understanding. It's understanding what someone is feeling, not feeling it for them. It doesn't require you to take on someone else's emotional burden, but it does require you to accept that feelings exist and that they have an impact. But all right, why am I talking about empathy at a Ruby meetup? As developers, it's easy to forget who the audience of our code actually is. We don't write code for computers. Computers are just a medium. We write code for people. And pretty much every line of code ever written has had some interaction, whether it's direct or indirect, with another person. And the decisions we make when we write code today will have an impact on the people who use that code. And all of us write code for ourselves. For some of us, it's because we're passionate about our work. But for all of us, there is a future version of ourselves that's going to be affected by the decisions we make about our code today, just like we're currently dealing with the decisions made by past versions of ourselves. And all of those decisions we make when we write code, our feelings have more of an influence over them than we might actually care to acknowledge or think about, because we are, for the most part anyway, human. So, yep. All right. At this point, you're probably like, nope, I didn't come here to talk about feelings, which fine. But I actually have some good news for you. This is actually easier than you might think. Now, This is a phrase that should be familiar to a lot of you here. It's that guy. Optimize for developer happiness is one of Matt's tenets for Ruby. Optimizing for developer happiness is fundamentally an act of empathy. We all understand the experience of being frustrated by a poorly designed language, and thus, by choosing to use Ruby, reflect our understanding of that by doing our best to make decisions that enable a more joyful experience for other developers. Reflect, understand, act, enable. Empathy in action. Sadly, as great as Ruby is, it's not a magic bullet. It gets us a long way there, but there are some problems it just can't solve. And, as much as we wish we could, we can't use Ruby for every solution. So how do we build empathy through code? And the thing about feelings, and, for the most part, at least with the simple ones, they're remarkably easy to convey through text. And even some of the more complex ones, we've managed to find fairly innovative ways of expressing them with text. And, recently, emojis have brought a new depth to the richness of our ability to express ourselves. This is a talk called a request for comments. And as the, decirculated fractional denomination of currency makes its descent, we've always had the tools to be able to do this. But, yep, all right, I know. We write self-documenting code. And yeah, self-documenting code is a valid and worthwhile practice, but it doesn't cover everything. How often have you found yourself asking or heard someone asking questions like this? Like, who wrote this? What is this? Why are we using this? When are we going to fix this? Where is who wrote this? Questions asked in anger are a pretty strong signal that there's something making it hard to develop empathy. Our code doesn't exist in a vacuum. We are human, and every day we have things going on in our lives that affect our work. Some of it positive, some of it negative. And really, no matter how hard we try, the effects of that will have an impact on the work we do. The context in which we write our code matters. And what do I mean by context? The interrogatives. Who, what, why, when, where, and how. Self-documenting code will give you the what and the how about that specific code, but it won't tell you anything about the person writing it, or their state of mind at the time, or what was happening in the business that they were working for, or their family, or the country, or the world. And those things matter. And imagine we had that context. What would the answer to those questions be? Who wrote this? Oh shit, well I did 3 months ago while responding to an incident at 3 a.m. What is this? Well, this is actually the first PR submitted by one of our junior engineers. And yeah, it's not up to my standards, but it works. Why are we using this? Well, because it allowed us to ship faster in our early stages, giving us an advantage over our biggest competitor. When are we going to fix this? Well, we try, but we have a valuable client who depends on this behavior, and the cost of shifting them is greater than the cost of fixing this. And, where's the cowboy that wrote that? Well, they're actually the CTO, and I should probably pay more attention during induction. Code doesn't exist in a vacuum. And comments allow us to connect our code to the context in which it was written. Self-documenting code is good, and keep writing it, but context matters. And the best, easiest, most immediate way to capture context specific to a piece of code is as a comment. But okay, context could be anything. How do we know what has value? How do we contain it? How do we stop people from just flooding our code base with noise? And that's a really good question. And, you know, something I'm still figuring out. But here's a starting point. Start with why. One of the most important pieces of information, and one we don't often record, is the reason for the existence of a piece of code or the series of decisions that led to the chosen solution. If a piece of code is non-trivial and the reason why it exists is non-obvious, write it down. Why does this exist? Why do we make this particular decision? Why did we do it this way? If you know who I work for, you could have guessed that this one was coming. Demonstrate vulnerability. Empathy is about understanding. For people to understand your experience, it has to be shared. And if there's something going on around you that impacted the code in a significant way, share it. Maybe it was the last day of the sprint and you just couldn't think of a better way to get it done. Maybe this was just meant to be a temporary fix put in place while you dealt with a 3-day-long incident and you were not able to get back and fix it up. Perhaps things just aren't going great right now and you need some help. Vulnerability is the strongest signal we can send that connects our code to our experience. As important as it is to be vulnerable, don't let the feelings become the signal. Use them to achieve an outcome. Be constructive and share opportunities. Is there a chance to refactor? Is there a quick win that you haven't had a chance to get to? Is there a teaching opportunity you want to offer to the next person who comes along, or is there a learning opportunity you want to explore? Call it out. Let people know that there's something to take from your experience. Comments are effectively long-running asynchronous conversations with an indeterminate number of future participants. In an active code base, things will be in flux. You have no idea who's going to be reading what you write at any given point down the track or when. What if they don't have access to the same information or knowledge as you, or are operating from a different point of cultural reference? What if all their base aren't in fact belong to you in the future? Tidy. If you change some code, make sure the comment reflects the change, or if it's no longer relevant, get rid of it. But be kind to other people and especially to yourself, to who you were in the past, who you are right now, and to whoever you'll become in the future. We share our experiences in order to help people understand. And storytelling is an inherent part of humanity. It's how we've always developed as a people. And why shouldn't it be something we bring into software development? Why shouldn't it be a part of our code? Empathy is about understanding. And this is something I care about a lot. And I acknowledge that some of the ideas I'm talking about here may not necessarily be practical or accessible for everyone. I am more or less neurotypical most of the time. This is something that matters a great deal to me and is something I want to keep exploring. So if the things I was talking about in this don't ring true for you and you would like to discuss it with me, please reach out because I'd love to talk about it with you. The better we understand each other, the more empathy we're able to develop, the kinder the world might end up being. And I think right now, working together to make the world a little bit kinder is something worth working for. And if comments are a way we can do that, then hey, why not? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. That's one we've waited for quite some time. It's been there in the issues. And we're thinking, we're going to hear it, and it was definitely worth the wait. Very.
I even have a clicker that for anticipation of doing it live in person.
Well, we do still have another issue from you, Dan. So maybe we'll be able to meet in person again, and you can use the clicker then.
I'd actually have to, write code first and remember how to do RSpec.
Before you kick off the other people having questions, I have two questions.
Please.
The first one was, did you actually say that about the CTO's code who wrote this book?
Not the CTO, but a co-founder. I'm not going to say which one.
No. And the other question was, when you originally talked about this talk, I actually thought you meant like commit comments, commit messages. Does the same thing hold true, or is this like in the code?
So it does. Comments. Honestly, the title of the talk is more so I can make the RFC joke than anything else. And it's sort of, there is a longer piece of prose that I'm working on that, talks about a bunch of things. And it really did come from the basmati rice as cookies meme. But it kind of grew out from there into how do we talk about these sorts of things? And, there is definitely an argument for, well, shouldn't this be in Git commits and Git commit messages? And well, some of it, yes, but a Git commit talks about a specific set of changes across a bunch of files. And a Git commit is not as secure and atomic as you may assume. And for me, like a lot of, if you write what you know, and for me, what I know is feelings. Excuse me. I was talking with Max Wheeler from Culture Amp today. Almost said the other one. And especially at the moment, his point was, especially at the moment, it's important to almost over-index on communication and make the point of ensuring that the message gets across and leaving no doubt as to intent and meaning. And I wanted to really kind of drive the point home and framing it through the lens of comments, which, again, pointing it out at the start, is a reasonably mildly contentious topic. And I thought, well, hey, why not? At least it'll get some people's attention. So
thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask?
Dan, have you had any experience trying to invite people in your team to adopt comments as a practice, as a regular?
Yeah, I did it a little bit within. So at my previous job, I wrote longer comments and sort of set up similar things, and it worked well, but it was a very small team. When I got to my current employer, which is Culture Amp, by the way, I don't know why I'm dancing around it. In my first team, it was an interesting experience because there was immediate, why did you write a 19-line comment to explain a 3-line method? And, because I wanted to explain that, there are reasons why we are doing things this way. It was met with some resistance and, some judicious editing got it down to something a little more reasonable, but it's something that it's something that, people have to see the value in it before they'll decide to come along. And it's not something you can enforce. It's really you have to keep the gates open and fight against people's inclination to shut them behind you. So, and you can't push people through on it. So, when they let me back on the code, if they ever do, I'll be doing it, and I'm going to start talking to people who I think might find it useful or beneficial, and we'll see how it goes.